Hello and welcome to TechAfrica News Connectivity Series. Africa has been at somewhat of a disadvantage when it comes to digital development and connectivity. With a population of almost 1.4 billion people, the rarity of internet and digital communications is alarming. This gap in connectivity is taking away much more needed services than Netflix and the classical social media. This disconnect includes the inability to access essential services such as banking, digital education, healthcare, e-commerce, and many more. What the rest of the world seems to taking for granted, parts of the African population still struggle with it. This is why the team of TechAfrica News decided to launch the digital series called Connectivity, the Key for Growth in Africa. We intend to bring together the key players and industry leaders to highlight ideas and technology that fosters innovation, creativity, and find opportunities that help combat the digital disconnect that Africa is actually facing. The year-long series will focus on different topics aimed at solutions that can help bring real change in Africa's digital connectivity, starting with our Spotlight satellite. Satellite connectivity is one of the key areas in bringing connectivity, especially to rural and semi-rural areas. Shifting from delivering TV and video to becoming ISPs, this sector is in for massive change. Limited connectivity has meant that majority cannot experience basic and quality broadband services. In many cases, mobile connectivity has limited reach and barely meet the growing demand. During this panel, TechAfrica News together with SES will explore how this is changing and how they and we can unlock opportunities and continue to connect Africa. Enjoy watching.
Hello, and welcome to today's conversation, which is part of TechAfrica News Connectivity Series, Spotlight Satellite, and is sponsored by SES. I'm Chris Green, Chief Editor for TechAfrica News. Today, we're going to discuss Africa's connectivity gap and how to extend connectivity across Africa to unlock growth and opportunities. During today's conversation, TechAfrica News, together with SES, Orange and RCS, will explore how this is changing and how they and we can unlock opportunities and continue to connect Africa. I'm joined today by an exciting group of people from SES, Orange and RCS. From SES, we have Caroline Kamatha, CK, who is Vice President, Fixed Data Africa. CK, welcome.
Thank you.
From Orange, we have Pierre Fafik, who is Director of the African Backbone Programme, Network Deployment. Pierre, welcome.
Thank you, glad to be here.
From RCS, we have Flippy Odendal, who is Managing Director of RCS. Flippy, welcome.
Hi guys, thanks Chris.
Also from SES, we have Dipu Pilar, who is Strategy and Market Intelligent Networks for SES. Dipu, welcome.
Thanks, Chris.
We're going to start this off with a presentation from Dipu, which covers market trends and forecasts for Africa. Dipu, over to you for this presentation.
Okay. Thanks, Chris, and welcome all of you to this panel discussion. So today I would start this session by giving an overview of the connectivity trends in the Africa markets, the opportunities and the challenges that SES and our partners face in the market in providing the connectivity services. Then this would be followed by a panel discussions where SES and our partners will discuss how we can address those opportunities and challenges in the connectivity market through our managed services. So this is a very good slide to start with, as it shows the global offline population, and it also shows the regional differences between the connected versus unconnected people. So according to the International Telecommunication Union, it is estimated that almost 46% of the global population do not have any access to internet. And in case of Africa, this percentage of unconnected population is much higher. So it is estimated that more than 70% of the Africans do not have access to internet. And you can also see that within Africa regions, there is a huge gap in the connectivity, connected populations between the countries. So especially if you see the landlocked countries in the Central African regions like Democratic Republic of Congo, Central African Republic, Chad, Mali, Mauritania, South Sudan. These are the countries where there's a large population that remains to be connected. And incidentally, these are also some of the hot markets for satellite in bridging the connectivity gap. And let's now talk about how the terrestrial networks have developed in Africa over the last 10, 15 years. So as players in the active in the connectivity market in Africa, you all would be remembering that the first big wave of submarine cables have started arriving in the market in the 2009, 10, 11 period, when the lot of capacity was brought in by systems like EC, CCOM, etc. And the satellite service in markets, especially in the coastal countries like Nigeria, Kenya, these markets were largely impacted because of the subsea cable arrival, compared to the players who had a kind of more diversified operation in the continent. And the subsea cables have continued their expansion, and pretty recently we are also seeing that the big cloud tech companies like the Facebooks and the Googles, they are also massively investing in the subsea cable development, because they understand the fact that in order to expand their revenue, they have to connect more people. But you can also see that even though the subsea cables have brought in so much capacity, the inland fiber development hasn't happened at the same pace in Africa, as shown by the map on the right hand side. So currently it is estimated that there is almost more than 1 million kilometers of operational fiber in Africa, but only 55% of the African population is living within a 25-kilometer radius of an operational fiber node. And this percentage is much lower in countries in the landlocked countries and the sparsely populated regions. And another major challenge is the fiber availability and the resiliency is not as high as compared to certain developed regions. And our partners, RCS and Orange, they would also agree with me in the fact that, in fact, SES O3P have been providing our services. The O3P sites are mostly in urban or semi-urban regions where we are coexisting or complementing the fiber providing the necessary resiliency for these services. And apart from the infrastructure challenges, there are also some other major challenges in Africa in the connectivity. So these charts beautifully explains that. On the left hand side, I have again shown the mobile broadband connectivity gap in Africa, and you can see that as I mentioned before, almost more than 70% of the Africans do not have any access to the mobile internet. But it is interesting to see that more than 50% of those who are unconnected are not unconnected because of lack of coverage, but for reasons other than coverage, like lack of affordability, lack of digital skills, literacy, etc., etc. And this is also kind of exemplified in the map I have shown on the right hand side, where I have mapped the price of a gigabyte of mobile data as a percentage of the minimum average income in different countries in Africa. And here you see that in certain countries like DRC, CAR, etc., a person has to spend almost 1/4 of his monthly income to kind of get access to 1 gigabyte of mobile data. So when we are designing the connectivity solutions, we have to also keep in mind that the solutions have to be affordable to the Africans, so that we can bridge the digital connectivity gap. And let's also see what's happening in the satellite capacity market in Africa. So this is a global map that shows the high throughput capacity addition that is going to happen across Africa in the next 4 years. And the bar graph shows the regional capacity additions, and the circular spots shows the capacity increase that is going to happen in the next 4 years over a particular location or a city. So here you can interestingly see that even though the capacity addition that our region is going to grow multifold, like for example, in the case of Middle East and Africa, the high throughput capacity is going to increase from under 300 gigabit per second to more than 4 terabit per second. That is more than 10 times increase. The capacity addition over a particular hotspot is not going to increase that much. This is because of the uniformly distributed capacity of the constellations as well as the sport beam architecture of the high throughput satellites. So in these scenarios, you can see that all capacities are not created equal, even though there is a massive jump. And the ability of the systems like our O3B Empower, which is able to kind of add the capacity exactly where it is required in a dynamically scalable manner over the hotspot location, that is going to be a key differentiator, even though like a lot of constellations are going to add capacity in the market. And let's also see, like, I mean, where we see the satellite service revenue is going to grow and which are also the applications that are going to drive this revenue growth. So you can see that again, the satellite service revenue growth is in Middle East and Africa region is expected to more than double, according to the projections from the market research consultancy Northern Sky Research. And the in Middle East and Africa region, the main applications which is going to drive this growth is the USO social inclusion projects. So this is kind of exemplified by the recent COVID pandemic. In fact, the governments in the region have understood the importance of bridging the digital gap, digital connectivity gap, so that to keep the economy ticking, because a lot of people working from home, studying from home, spending most of the time on the digital platforms, the demand for the bandwidth has increased multifolds, and many of our customers in the region as well as globally have kind of demanded us to increase their backhaul capacity during the pandemic to meet up to this demand. And the next major segment in the enterprise VSAT segment is the energy, which includes the mining and the oil and gas segment. So here also we see like the move of the move to the digital oil fields or digital mining fields, reducing the dependency on the human efforts and bringing more Internet of Things, cloud connectivity. That is going to drive the connectivity demand here, and the low latency, high throughput capacity is going to play a major role here. So the biggest application that is going to drive the revenue growth in Africa is the mobile backhaul and IP trunking application. So especially the mobile backhaul application. So in Africa, we are seeing that currently 3G is the most dominant technology, but 4G is kind of rapidly growing. In fact, the 4G adoption is kind of almost double in the next 5 years, according to the latest GSMA report. So we are seeing that in many markets, the countries are directly jumping from 2G to 4G. So this is driving the throughput demand. And here also we see that the mobile operators in the market are demanding a reliable partner in extending the network rather than just a capacity provider. So there is a demand for more and more managed service solutions. And in the IP trunking, where we connect to the fiber backbone through the big pipe connectivity, we see that even though there won't be much increase in the number of sites which are going to be using this connectivity, there would be an increase in the amount of throughput that is needed in this application. And finally, as a last thing, I would like to also showcase a value-added services that we can provide beyond the connectivity. So this is kind of a location intelligence service where we have mapped all the mining locations in Africa, and this could kind of help our customers to kind of identify where to exactly know, like, I mean, where the locations are, what is the kind of commodity being mined, and we can overlay this with our bandwidth, with our satellite beam coverage, and identify the opportunities, and also kind of help to identify opportunities in the landed beams where you can add more customers within those. So That concludes my session. And as a conclusion, I would like to say that Africa is a big market currently for the connectivity, with more than 70% population that remains unconnected. But there are obviously many challenges in the market in providing the connectivity, like the infrastructure challenges, the lack of affordability, digital skills, etc. But it is good to know that the satellites have also kind of improving their cost per bit, bringing in more capacity. And we are also adopting the innovative business solutions like the lower TCO models, the pay-as-you-go, volume-based billing. So we can address some of these challenges in African connectivity. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, many thanks for that, Deepu, for your presentation and all of that information. It's very much appreciated. All of it is very relevant. However, for me, there are 2 points that really sort of stand out. In that 70%, and it's a massive number, of the African population is offline, and broadband is unaffordable for many Africans. This presents a significant opportunity, but clearly there are challenges to achieve this. CK, I'd like to start with you, if I may. SES has vast experience and a wide network that should enable affordable connectivity for rural and semi-rural areas. What is your view on the challenges that rural connectivity poses?
Thanks, Chris. Very happy to be at this panel with Pierre, with Flippy, and Depu as well. And very enlightening. I mean, listening to Depu, these are statistics that we in the market are very familiar with. And we talk oftenly about closing or bridging the digital divide. But this has continued to be, it's widening in as much as we're trying to close the gap. Some of the things I can take out of Depu's presentation point to the fact that there's a lot more capacity expected within the region, that there are challenges along affordability, there are challenges beyond coverage, because we have at least around 50% of the addressable population in Africa having some sort of coverage, but there are other underlying issues that impact how we are able to improve the connectivity. Now, we do a lot of business today as SES within the urban areas, providing fiber resiliency on our satellite connectivity. We do as well address some of the gaps for cellular backhauling. This is very rural connectivity and peri-urban as well. And on top of that, we're able to provide solutions for broadband across Africa. So whether it's mining companies that are not near a fiber node, or just regular connectivity where there's limited options in terms of terrestrial infrastructure and limited options in terms of how the customers could connect. So there's a bit of a mix in terms of what we're able to offer. But I think to really answer your question, the challenge for rural connectivity will persist. And I think the biggest equation that we need to address is how do we affordably provide connectivity in rural areas. In some cases, it's challenging in terms of costs for fiber to get into very rural areas, and satellite then becomes the connectivity partner of choice because of the affordability, because of the ease of deployment, because you avoid multiple potential points of failure, and each technology is suitable for the different regions that we go into. If I would look at as well just purely 3G and 4G penetration, because that's an area where we anticipate a lot of growth in Africa, but that's also limited today. And again, it goes back to the total cost of ownership. How do we do this affordably? And the solutions then to both rural and urban connectivity would be affordability is a big one. And we at SES understand that that's a very important point. And not only affordability from the point of view of the partners, so the mobile network operators or the service partners, but affordability downstream to the end users as well. And I think that's a big topic that we will most likely go into details on. There are many other challenges, but I think that would be one that would unlock the most demand. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there, CK. I mean, one statistic that I've actually got is that the World Bank says that 59% of sub-Saharan Africa is rural. So, I mean, you're right. I mean, the urban areas, it's easier to cover off, but it's a challenge both in terms of technology, but really affordability in terms of being able to connect these rural and semi-rural areas of Africa. Flippy, if I can sort of move to you for the moment, can you provide us with your thoughts on the information that Deepu provided, as well as the viewpoint from RCS, as to your history and experience of working with SES, and also the comments that CK has made?
Sure, Chris, thanks. Just for background, RCS is one of the first ISPs in South Sudan, so we date back to the pre-independence period. And when we started, the environment was there was no mobile network operators, no terrestrial networks. All connectivity was through satellite in form of RBGAN and VSAT. Pricing was very high, and adoption for that very reason was obviously very limited. And over the years, we saw a lot of positive change, some of which RCS pioneered in partnerships with others. And to circle in on SES, we, for example, introduced O3B MEO trunking and integrated that into our wireless networks in 2014. So that afforded us the opportunity to leapfrog. It created a vast improvement on our user experience because we all of a sudden had this 4 times latency improvement. And remembering that this was in a time that there was no fiber connectivity, we as a country only got our fiber at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020. And that fiber is very much limited to the capital at the moment. But that introduction of O3B not only improved the quality of the user experience, but it drove down the pricing. So in our environment today, there's 3 mobile network operators, 20-ish ISPs, which is quite a lot for a market of this size. So everybody fights to secure their piece of the same pie, which obviously is a good thing for the end user from a pricing perspective, because then that drives pricing down, but it doesn't allow healthy margins to encourage investments outside of the capital where the market size and the ARPU is much lower. So you tend to find, and to hook this into Tipu's presentation, is that he mentioned the statistics of how much penetration there is within certain countries. But even if you then zoom into a country like South Sudan and you look at the penetration map of South Sudan, you will see that most of that is concentrated around the capital and then a few other main cities. But to get out to the people, that's not happening on the level that we would really like to see. What we did see, however, is a 16-fold drop in price over the past years. However, that is still not good enough. And if I listen and I see what's available in the market currently, and I know that businesses require profit in order to reinvest and to build out networks, and they have to look at return on investment. There's a lot of challenges here because there needs to be a holistic approach. I think there needs to be a partnership approach where companies work together in order to get to that point. And I think the 2 things that I want to just drop into the conversation, which doesn't really relate to the connectivity component alone, but in addition to literacy and affordability and digital adoption, you also have power issues in the remote areas. And the affordability that Tipu spoke about is the connectivity of 1 gigabyte, the cost of 1 gigabyte, but you first need a device in order to access the internet. So the only way that I can see it work is a holistic partnership approach.
Yeah, thanks for the information, Flippy. One point that you raised, I think, is very interesting, in that there's been a 16-fold price drop over a year or so, I think you've turned around and said. Has that dramatically helped in terms of increasing the penetration or increasing connectivity?
Yeah, so let me just get the statistic right. It's a 16-fold price drop over an 8-year period. So it's not as dramatic as over a period of time. But we still see that drop continuing. So it did not really help that much. It helped to bring better quality internet to the connected spots. But you still find that it's concentrated within very particular areas and not distributed sufficiently. So distribution, I would think, is one of the major keys in growing that penetration outside of the main capitals.
Okay, all right, yeah, that's clear. And yeah, I said it was a year, it's 8 years. Yeah, that makes a slight difference. Pierre, if we can sort of move to you now, what is your experience relating to, first of all, Deepu's presentation on the information on it, with the comments from CK and Flippy, and how Orange sees this combined with your partnership with SES?
Yes, thank you, Chris, and thank you to the other speakers for their interesting views. Indeed, Orange is a player actually on both ends of the spectrum. We at the same time we are a major telecom service provider in many countries. We have operations in 18 countries in Africa, so we have an experience which is of course different, but joins Flippy's experience in some areas. Our countries are different, so we have different issues, and as was said by the previous speakers, actually the reality is also different in the field between areas, regions, etc. However, we have, of course, investing a lot to try to improve coverage, which is the first thing we discussed. And today, if we look at the overall coverage, the population coverage, which is different, of course, from the territory coverage, the population coverage is rather good actually in broadband, as was said. It's around 50%, let's say, for 4G today, which is good. So the problem is not only it remains, of course, an issue, but it's not only coverage. It remains an issue which we work on with adequate solutions. For instance, it was mentioned that, of course, we need to look at solutions for powering, which is a problem in some areas. So we have developed solutions based on solar panels on our side. We also work on light mast solutions for areas which are very sparsely populated. So it is an issue, but it is an issue that is worked on by operators. And as was said by SES as well, of course, multiple technologies can be used for that and should be used for that. It's not a competition, it's rather a co-competition. So we try to use everything to make it happen. I think there's been, as Flippy said as well, a real improvement. There were some statistics given. What I found through World Bank numbers is that today, if you look at sub-Saharan Africa, the average part of the income that is necessary for the 1 gig connection it has dropped from 13% to 4% in 2020. But it's an average. It's true that some countries are still experiencing issues in this area. Also, I think it's Flippy who mentioned the question of the terminals. That's also an important question. And indeed, we have worked, for instance, on solutions, specific solutions dedicated to the African market with some providers. So we offer the Sansa device, which is a $30 smartphone, allowing to bring the internet to the person itself, to the user itself, himself or herself. So that's the first thing. Now it's not only a question about coverage and about device, as was said. It's also a question of affordability. Affordability is related, of course, to what the operators do locally, but also how the internet comes to the various countries. And we are at Orange. We're also active as a global carrier. The organization where I work myself is an international carriers organization. So we provide connectivity services, and it's very important to all operators, very important, of course, to work with cable consortiums. Still today, submarine cable bring 99% of the internet capacity to Africa, but it's not enough. Indeed, as was mentioned, the question is also how you bring then the internet to the various areas. And that's one of the reasons why we launched the Joliba project a few years ago, to improve the international connectivity, the transnational connectivity in West Africa. And there are such projects by ourselves or by other players in the market within Africa. And it's very important to improve the transnational connectivity, as well as, of course, at the same time, improve the domestic connectivity. So Orange invests about 1 billion euros a year in capex in the area to work on all these needs. But of course, it's still remains a major issue. And Joliba, for instance, brings a new kind of connectivity, seamless connectivity to operators and to enterprises in the area, which is really new. And it increases, I think it was mentioned as well, it increases not only the accessibility and the affordability, but also the quality, which is also a major issue in the area, is offering a quality service, resiliency, which, for instance, for a business is very important. You cannot just accept that things will drop for a long time. So I think that's the second link, if you want. So the second area where we work is indeed bringing this connectivity, and that means so network, and also, of course, points of presence where you can deliver IP. We have about 35 points of presence in Africa today. I think it's very important also to have this capillarity to allow every player to take a benefit of it. So that's basically where we are active. I just want to add one thing, because I think it's very important, and it is for Orange also very important. It was mentioned by, I think, by DPU and also by CK, that digital literacy is also an issue, and Orange has recognized that, and we also have, through the Orange Foundation, we also work with the local authorities, and we set up some. For instance, we have an initiative which is around women's digital centers to help women getting better access to the digital world. And likewise, we have a strong program also of digital schools, where we work with the various national authorities to help getting schools equipped, and therefore giving a better digital access to the kids. And I think those we are only, of course, contributing as a business player. So we're not pretending to change everything, but we're bringing our break basically to this world. And I think it's very important to work on this, because indeed, I think the triptych is having the connectivity, having a good affordability for the people, and also having the access, the real access, meaning device, and also ability to use a device to make the internet a reality. And with this, I think we can bring it to bridging this digital divide that CK mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you, Pierre. I mean, all three of you, CK, Flippy, and Nupio, have raised the point on affordability. And certainly it was in Deepu's presentation. Can I just come back to you on the point you raised when you said about the $30 smartphone? How was that received? What was the uptake of that like? Because I think the figures that I've seen is 60% of Africans have a smartphone. So what impact did launching this $30 smartphone have?
I think it was very well received. It's adapted to, of course, there are, I mean, the smartphones have started coming to Africa in recent years, and you mentioned it. It's now a reality, and such initiatives, not only our initiative, of course, but such initiatives are, I think, very instrumental to making it possible for people. Because if you look at the prices those devices generally have in Europe, even though they are subsidized most of the time, those level of prices would not be acceptable or affordable in Africa. So I think it's very important. It really is a major part of the topic.
Okay, so it seems that we're sort of making progress in being able to bring down pricing from what you've said, Pierre, from what Flippy's turned around and said in terms of the pricing decrease that's gone on, and also from what CK said originally.
I think that the prices, the numbers that Flippy was mentioned are very interesting, and we see something very similar. As an example, in Senegal, I think the prices have dropped by 86% in 5 years. So it's similar. We see really a strong involvement of the local operators to try to make the internet affordable. As Felipe said, it's never enough. So we still need to work on it. But really, there has been a big change. And if you travel in Africa, I mean, you see that people are now really getting used to the internet. So we need to still work on it, because part of the population, as was mentioned, still doesn't have access. But I think there's a long way that has already been made by the local players and by us around this table. I think all technologies again are a way to work on it. We are using satellite, for instance, in countries like Central Africa. We have a project with SES. We have also projects in Senegal. We have partnerships in Senegal. So I think it's really important to take the better of all technologies. Fiber is, of course, the ultimate solution where it's affordable, and where not, we need to really look at alternative solutions.
Yeah, I sort of totally agree with you. I mean, from some of the data that we saw at TechAfrica News earlier this year, I think the price paid per 1 gigabyte of data for an African, it takes up 8.8% of their monthly income. Whereas if you compare that to, say, LATAM, where it's just over 3%, and in Asia it's about 1.5%, I think. So clearly there's some sort of work to do, but at least it's sort of heading in the right direction. So I think from what you've all turned around and said on the affordability side, we've made progress, but we just have to try to sort of speed it up. CK, can I come back to you again? What are the strategic partnerships that SES is building to deliver connectivity anywhere at any time? Can you sort of update us and give us some information on that, please?
All right, I can talk about our approach of partnership within Africa. But before I go into that, just maybe a quick point on the affordability piece, because we are also doing a lot of innovation in terms of the satellite build. So we're excited to announce, and this has been announced previously, our O3B mPower solution, building onto the success of the O3B solution, which brings more capacity, brings more flexibility. And in general, we've seen a huge transformation within the satellite space when it comes to elements like launch. You know, we talk now about electric propulsion. We talk about reusable launch vehicles. We see what has been happening with SpaceX, and all those are innovations within our industry to drive up affordability, because the demand is there. There's a latent demand, meaning there's demand, but people struggle to afford, and if we can find our contribution in that space, that goes a long way. And still as well, on the affordability piece, we have gone into partnerships with the equipment vendors, because equipment tends to be a big piece. So there's access equipment for end users, which is your mobile phone, your laptop, and stuff like that. But then there's the core equipment that we need to deploy services. So we're trying to work very closely with our equipment vendors, multiple vendors, to see how we affordably address that. But let me go now into your question, which is how we look at partnerships, and I'll link this into something that both Pierre and Felipe have alluded to, having the right level of partnerships and looking at the entire ecosystem. If you're to drive up the affordability, drive up access, it has to come from a partnership point of view. So we work very closely within Africa with the telcos, MNOs who deliver the services to their end users. We also have partnerships with service providers. service delivery partners rather, that help us to deliver managed services. And we have as well partnerships with what we call technology partners. So your technology partners, in this case, will be the equipment vendors, multiple of them that we work very closely with. But on top of that, we have had a focus on working with partners like Microsoft, because we are now talking about moving everything to the cloud. So we have very strategic partnerships with Microsoft Azure. We have partnerships as well in progress with both with IBM, with AWS. And the thinking within SES is, it's one thing to launch all this massive capacity, bring this tsunami of capacity over the continent. But what really matters at the end of the day is how the end users and our partners are able to access connectivity. And if people are moving workloads to the cloud, then we want to be able to have that right partnership. If you're looking at improving the TCO, the total cost of ownership for MNOs, then we need to come together and partner and deliver part of the service, or get service providers or service delivery partners who help us to bring this solution in a very uncomplex and uncomplicated way to the MNOs and keep them focused on their core business. So there are all those kind of innovative thought patterns going on within the organization. And we've actually gone ahead beyond just thinking about what we can do and signed up to this level of partnerships. What I'd like to do, because with everybody we have on the call or on this panel now, is to explore a little bit better what we can do within the ecosystem. Because when I look at the connectivity ecosystem, apart from the partners I've talked about, so the telcos, the MNOs, the equipment vendors, the technology vendors that we have, there's always the government, there's the regulator, there's a wider ecosystem that helps us to propel this forward. And each one of these players within the partnership ecosystem have to move in sync, have to play their part for us to close the divide, address issues around affordability and access.
Yeah, I don't think anyone can disagree with what you've just turned around and said. It's certainly correct. Can I just come back to you on the point you sort of raised originally about O3B, the low power? Obviously, I've seen quite a bit of publicity from SES about this, and you sort of mentioned it as, don't know if you use these words, a sort of game changer as such, but clearly it's very important technology. Can you sort of give us a little bit more information about O3B and how it's working, and the steps that you've made and the progress you've made so far this year?
Right. Thanks, Chris, for the question. So when the best way to talk about O3B is we launched O3B back in 2014. And Flippy, as you said, was one of our first customers in Africa to take up the solution. This is a game changer, different product that we brought into the market. And the big differentiator was the low latency capability. So today, you either have satellites on the geostationary, the geo orbit, you have satellites on the medium Earth orbit, and we as SES are the only ones operating in that orbit. And then we have the LEOs, which are now the new solutions that are coming into the market. And we've had massive success with the O3B solution, the medium Earth orbit solution. We have customers in DRC. We work very closely with Orange, as PR mentioned, in CAR, Central African Republic, providing that same level of service. We provided services across Madagascar, different parts of the continent. And that has changed the way people have been able to connect. It's been the solution of choice for mobile network operators looking for fiber resiliency, looking for fiber extension or fiber-like connectivity to extend the reach of their networks into new cities and new towns where either fiber is not available or fiber is available, but is not reliable yet, because fiber goes through different levels of maturity. Now we're going to the next level. We are building on that success, building on what we have learned through the O3B solution, and going to the O3B Empower, which we're intending to launch at the end of this year. That will bring in a terabit of capacity. It'll bring more flexibility. It'll have these added on layers of the partnerships we're building up with Microsoft, so access to the cloud. And it's definitely a game changer in terms of being able to connect in a very meaningful way.
No, I mean, that sounds great. I mean, yeah, I look forward to following the progress on O3B low power and seeing how that changes things as we sort of move forward. Flippy, it sort of makes sense to sort of move to you next, given that CK sort of name checked you as one of the earlier customers. So can you tell us how you leveraged SES's Geo and O3B solutions to increase your market reach?
Yeah. So Chris, for us, it was not so much market reach in terms of geographic market expansion, and I'll explain why. It was absolutely the plan to use it for that purpose, but due to in-country elements, we faced some conflict situations, and that sort of put a damper on our expansion plans. But where we used it very successfully is to move from a Geo VSAT solution integrated into a wireless distribution network, and we plugged in O3B, and all of a sudden you could deliver better quality service, you could deliver talkative applications, for example, CRM systems, more focused on the enterprise market. All of those just work better on O3B than it worked on Geo stationary satellites. Now we've gone to the next phase where we have got fiber in Juba, for example, and where SES was quite good is that they saw the problem for their business coming, because obviously where there's reliable fiber at a cheaper price than what satellite would cost, then they would lose their market share or their relevance, so to speak. So they then introduced a third-party SD-WAN solution and enabled us to come up with a blended service. In other words, what we have today is O3B and fiber, and we select, it's an automated selection process in terms of where the traffic routes, and auto failovers on the fiber routes as well as on O3B. So it brought a lot of stability and flexibility into our offering into the market. But where I'm really excited is Empower, because I also saw the original plans for it many years ago. And if it delivers on 50% of what it promised at that point, it will be a game changer, and then it will enable players like ourselves to go into more remote locations and use the distribution systems and networks that we have today, but plug that into the Empower and be more flexible to move it around within the country. So I'm quite excited to see what that does to opening up new doors and new business cases.
Okay, yeah. When I use the terminology "game changer," then it looks like I was right. And of course, I refer to it as low power, but Empower, yeah, that's the right technology to use. So, as I said, I look forward to seeing how the deployment of this really addresses some of these issues that have been highlighted. Pierre, if I can sort of reach back to you for the next comment. I noticed on Deepu's presentation that although subsea cable and fiber is expanding rapidly, going to the core of Africa is hardly happening. And that Deepu had highlighted that. There has to be a potential opportunity here for the expansion of cellular to underserved areas, therefore increasing connectivity. Given that Orange provides a wholesale carrier solution, can you provide us with more information and how you can achieve this?
Yes, there are two aspects to this. I think the first one is indeed, and it's been covered already by Flippy and by CK. The first one is how you increase domestic connectivity to areas which are not as reachable. And we have, again, within the Orange footprint, we have very different countries. We have very large countries from a geographical point of view, like the DRC, for instance, where you have, let's say, the population is split in very different areas, very distant, with challenges to interconnect them. and satellite solutions have been used for this. They're not the only solution that they've been used for this. The other point is also as we discussed, the transnational connectivity. I think it's very important, and we have in most countries, particularly in maybe the more developed countries in the areas, we have already existing infrastructure, but very often they're not used totally efficiently due to the fact that they're national, and it's very important to build transnational networks, and that's what we tried to do with the Joliba initiative. So bringing something which is seamless, basically, allowing operators to share and to better mutualize the infrastructures they have today, and provide a service end-to-end with a better quality and easier access, and also in the end with the hope of improving affordability, as we discussed. So I think those two aspects are important. Now, as I mentioned before, of course, there are some very domestic issues. We work, I think I mentioned it already, on technical solutions which are more adapted to local, to rural areas where we have less dense populations, and therefore you need to adapt your solutions in technical terms. That's why I mentioned lighter masts, for instance, or powering solutions which are specific. I mean, we have developed a lot, of course. Makes sense in Africa. We've developed a lot the solar panel grids for our solutions. So I think it's a mix of many things. Again, there's not one technology, one solution that will solve the issue. It really is a case of making use, as Flippy said, of the various solutions that are available, and make sure we use the most adapted one for every case, and that will help us, of course, over time to reach even those areas where today it seems more difficult. I don't know if I answered correctly your question, Chris, but that's
I think it's that's fine, and you sort of covered off some of them. So on the Joliba solution, I can't remember now if you mentioned it earlier, Pierre. How long has this been launched, and how has this been progressing?
Joliba has been launched. It's a project that has been started a few years ago already. It's been launched commercially early this year in 2021. Actually, we announced it at the Capacity Africa last year, and been launched early this year. And it's interesting because it's raised a lot of interest from operators in the area. So it's covering West Africa. That's the area where we are working.
Yeah.
It raised a lot of interest, a lot of questions. Of course, it takes time then to migrate because operators have existing solutions, so they are using it for their additional needs. But it's raised a lot of interest. Particularly, I think what's very interesting with the solution is the possibility to offer a one-stop shop for end-to-end circuits from a country to another country. Let's say, for instance, from Senegal to Burkina Faso, for instance. And the fact that it comes with better quality due to the natural resiliency of the solution based on the IP network. So I think that's the two main features that have attracted interest from the operators. So we're still in the development phase. It's a starting phase, but we're very happy with the interest that the market has shown, and with the first customers we have. We are learning as we also connect customers, of course, and we hope to continue growing and bringing with these solutions, bringing also a better and a more affordable solution for internet users.
Yeah, thanks for that, Pierre. I mean, that's interesting to understand a little bit more about the solution and the uptake of it. And it's interesting, I think, from all three companies that we have here today, which are really covering sort of different parts of the ecosystem. Let's say you've all got very good ideas and different ways to move things forward. And if you go back to what we said at the very beginning of the discussion about expanding sort of connectivity across Africa, the opportunities and the growth that's there, it's clear that things are progressing. Based upon what we've discussed today, I'd initially like to ask of Pierre and Flippy if they see connectivity improving in Africa in, let's say, by the end of 2022, which is, let's face it, it's only 15 months away now. Flippy, can I just start with you? I mean, how do you see connectivity improving, increasing over the next 15 months?
Yeah, 15 months is a short time, Chris.
Yeah, it is.
But in our market, I think it's new satellite technologies that's coming in. It's SES, but there's also others, and that competition drives new innovation and new adoption. I think fiber penetration will continue, and I think what companies like ourselves will do is to jump a little bit ahead, to potentially start doing the distribution networks with a satellite connection, and then wait for the backbone to be built into location, so that you sort of start creating the market, rather than sitting back and waiting for it to happen. So I do think that we'll see some improvements, but in our area we had, if we look 15 months back, then we had incredible increase in the connectivity. If you just look at the mobile network operators, 15 months ago we were on 3G. There were very limited fiber and not sufficiently reliable. Now that has increased, it's still a service company like ourselves still has dual routes all the way and multiple breakouts, etc. Because for us the quality and the uptime is very important to our customers. But we saw the mobile network operators, if I can look at one of them without mentioning names, they increased their capacity by 6-fold within this period.
Yeah.
And that's purely based on the pricing and capability of the fiber coming into the country. So then they increased, they obviously changed the network from a 3G to 4G network. And so you see this growth, and that will just continue to be. So with the exception of the high throughput satellites, fiber penetration deeper into the country, certain companies jumping ahead to establish distribution networks before the plugins arrive, Mpower, for example, coming available. It will all depend on the terminals that connects to that new satellite constellation as well, because that is really where it will be a very small selected market, or whether it would be available to a broader spectrum. And we still wait on that. I actually want to put CK on the spot and just find out a bit, CK, what is the progress that you've made? Because from a satellite perspective, obviously you can deliver the capacity, but is the terminals going to be affordable, and how will it compare? Will it just be a trunking solution, or will it also be an end customer solution?
Thanks, Flippy. So we've gotten into partnerships with a couple of equipment vendors, and the whole idea has been, we want to bring in affordable terminals. We want to be able to address the cellular backhauling market, because from all the statistics, from the demand, from talking to a lot of our partners within the market and in other continents as well, there's going to be a huge demand for cellular backhauling. So the idea is to bring in smaller terminals. We've had the conversations around having the phase array, the flat panel antennas as well. And we've invested in companies like Isotropic in partnership to develop and build up terminals for us that would be able to address this market. So the idea for Mpower is to have smaller antennas, be able to still provide a solution for the trunk market, But where we are really excited and where we think will make a difference and where the demand is the smaller terminals that can be deployed to provide connectivity in the thousands across different regions where we do business in. Yeah, that's the dream. Yeah.
Does that make you happy, Flippy?
Yeah, that makes me happy. But she mentioned that's the dream, so it's still a work in progress. But it's a good target.
Okay, thanks for that, sort of, CK. So yeah, obviously, sort of having like Empower there, you need to have the terminal to do it. So perhaps we'll come back to that in a minute. But yeah, the same question that I asked, sort of, Flippy, to you as well. I mean, how do you see things progressing over the next 15 months?
Yeah, well, certainly. I completely concur with Flippy. Obviously, the demand will continue to be strong and to grow strongly. There's no question about it. We have reached, I think, overall 14 terabit per second traffic, IP traffic in Africa. It's been multiplied by 6 in a few years, in 5 years, I believe. I agree. There's no reason for it to stop, particularly if you look at what is happening in other areas. So we'll continue to see this growth, or at least this demand growth. So the question becomes, of course, how we can sustain it, how operators can find solutions that allow it to be both at the same time feasible, sustainable, and also affordable for the end users. As we see, also, I think it's very important we've not mentioned, we've only discussed basically networks here, but what we are all about is about services. What we want to offer is services to the end customers. And in the end, those services, they serve also the broader economy. If you look at there is a clear correlation between the growth of the economies, and it's not only about Africa, but it's true in Africa, and the development of the telecommunications. Obviously, in a continent where the infrastructures, the roads, the ports, etc., are not as developed as in other areas, the telecoms are really a major asset for the countries to develop. And we see that by investing in these areas, the countries and also the operators, of course, are building, I think, solutions for the future. And that's why you see initiatives like the ones of Smart Africa, for instance, trying to build, let's say, a digital Africa. I think that's a major issue and will remain a major issue. So I agree with you. There's still a lot of work to do. I think when we look back at the few past years, we can be proud of what we did together. And I'm sure that we're going to succeed in improving this yet for the sake of our end users. So I'm pretty optimistic about what we're going to be able to do in the coming 2 years and beyond. Maybe just one comment. You said end 2022, as Flippy said, it's almost tomorrow. There are a few things that are going to come up, let's say not quite maybe in 2022, but basically in the same kind of time frame. New cables are coming, new submarine cables are coming around Africa, on the coast of Africa. That's going to have an impact as well on the overall cost of the IP traffic. So I think the future is bright. That's what I would say. There's a lot of things to do, and there's a lot to come that we can contribute to.
Yeah, I agree with you that sort of 2022 is realistically sort of just around the corner. And as has happened sort of during the conversation, I think Flippy, you said about the 16-fold price drop sort of taking 8 years, but we don't want to be taking 8 years for sort of things to sort of really progress. Africa has to sort of catch up with the rest of the world. So, but the signs are there. The signs are looking good. It's encouraging. CK, would you like to give a summary from an SES perspective as we sort of look to sort of move things to a close?
Yes, happy to do that, and I can answer the question as well, where we think we'll be in the next 15 months.
Yeah, sure.
very short time in our industry. You know, both Pierre and Philippe can attest to that. But I'm drawn to where we were 15 months ago, before, you know, in the middle of a pandemic. No one saw this coming, and it is a space of change. It's a space of adjustment. What we've experienced is when COVID hit, there was a huge demand. All our MNO partners needed additional capacity for connectivity, but then the realities of what was happening hit, and the understanding that this pandemic was going to be with us for a little bit longer. The lockdowns in the different countries. The economic downturn that came with that, and we've seen some sort of slump in the demand. And I think this the COVID pandemic in Africa will shape connectivity in one way or the other, with people losing their jobs, or with the economy shrinking. And I think PR is the one who articulated this point very well. There's a very strong correlation between how economies perform and the uptake for technology. So I think we're in a very disruptive space right now, and we will continue to see the disruption. But I think, listening to everybody on the call, we're all optimistic that even in the midst of this disruption, our anticipation and expectation is that we will see growth in one shape or the other coming in. So, Chris, let's have a conversation 15 months from now and see if our predictions make sense. To do that. But but in summary, I really want to thank the panel. I think we've had a very good conversation. I feel like we could continue talking about what we are individually seeing, what we are doing in the market space towards bridging this digital divide. And I can say that from SES, we understand the challenges. We see the trends, as Depu articulated very well. And we are innovating even in the midst of the pandemic. There's the build-up that has been ongoing for O3B Empower. The idea is to launch the service this year, provide the capacity. The partnerships with the different vendors and technology partners has continued. Cultivating the partnerships with our partners on the call as well, with Orange, with RCS. Those conversations are going on. And the idea is that we want to bridge this digital divide, but in a meaningful way, in a sustainable way as well, and to be able to deliver value. It's not just about what we're doing in space, but also what we are doing on the ground to ensure that the quality of service to the customers and the end users is meaningful and delivers the right level of value. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, EK. I mean, okay. I think you fixed up a date for about 15 months' time for the four of us to convene again and sort of have a look and have a further discussion and sort of see what's changed.
Yeah. Hopefully we will rendezvous somewhere, not in London, maybe somewhere in Juba, and we can go spend a few days there, maybe, and have this conversation face to face.
That sounds good to me, because for sure in sort of 15 months' time we'll actually be able to do things traveling and face to face, as opposed to having to sort of do things virtually. And when you look back at the last, well, it's longer than 15 months. It's probably 18 to sort of 20 months now. You go back to the beginning of 2020, and no one sort of saw what was going to happen and how things have been impacted. Well, I mean, one thing for me is sort of, two things, I suppose, really, is very clear. The issues that I highlighted coming from Deepu's presentation at the very start of this, in terms of low broadband penetration and affordability. They're the two issues. But from the conversations we've had and from the points that you've sort of all raised, steps are in place and have been taking place to actually rectify this. So I think with what's happening and what you've all turned around and said, I'm far more confident that when we do have this conversation in 15 months' time, it's going to be looking at it, this is much improved, this is really good, this is going forward, and Africa is rapidly catching up, which is what we want to happen, because that benefits all of us, but more importantly, it benefits the consumers as well. And ultimately, that's what it's about. You can have all these new and different services that can be pushed out, whether that's remote learning, whether that's healthcare, whether that's governmental, as you mentioned, CK, because that's very important as well. So yes, I think we should be in a good position as we sort of go forward. So I'd like to thank all who have contributed today, CK and Deepu from SES, Pierre from Orange, and Flippy from RCS for all your valuable insights and how we can improve connectivity across Africa. We all have to work together to achieve this, but as I said, from what's been discussed, everyone wants this to work, to ensure that all of Africa is finally sort of properly connected. I'm Chris Green for TechAfrica News. You can find out more information on our website, techafricanews.com. Thanks very much.
This might not seem like the time for innovation. Our world faces urgent challenges needing urgent solutions, but this is exactly the time to take a breath, look at what's coming and adapt. It's time to be disruptive amidst all this disruption. Innovators will emerge as leaders, and at SES we've got a proven track record in innovation. Our O3b MEO constellation is the industry's only broadband NGSO system, and now we're launching O3b mPOWER, and it's turning this moment into momentum. We've developed the most exciting, the most scalable, the most high-performance system that we can in order to solve the problems that you face on a daily basis with your customers. This next-generation innovation propels us forward with exponential increases in scale, performance, and flexibility to help you transcend future demand. We're reimagining what's next, and we're doing it together with you.